me, I always take into account every year, like every player that's on our team. Right? So some people have the adage of, oh, you guys are going all in because you make a certain move here and there. But to me, what year aren't you going all in? Because if you're not trying to go all in, whatever that move is, then it's just a disrespect to the organization, a disrespect to all the players who are putting their bodies through a ton of pain, a ton of suffering to go out and play this game. So for me, just respecting the game and what it means to me, every year we're trying to accomplish the goal of doing our absolute best to put.
Hi, this is Aaron Wilson. We're talking today about Texans coach DeMeco Ryans and his growth as a head coach. And, of course, he's the architect of the Texans' aggressive, hard-hitting defense, which is built in his vision, which is a physical vision and one that's defined by an aggressive pass rush, tight coverage, man coverage from his corners, and an ability to track the football, and linebackers like Azeez Al-Shaair that get downhill and make a lot of tackles. So when you look at the offseason, I feel like it's a defining one for DeMeco Ryans in his collaboration with general manager Nick Caserio. What took place this offseason was them really putting their foot down and deciding that enough was enough. They've been to the divisional round 6 times in franchise history, including twice under DeMeco Ryans' leadership, losing each time in that divisional round. 0-6 all-time as a franchise, 0-2 under DeMeco Ryans, who's 2-2 in the playoffs. There's a lot of coaches that it takes them a long time to win their first playoff game. And I think it portends for a bright future, these indicators of DeMeco Ryans' ability to coach in big games. So let's look at some of the key decisions and some of his commentary about what they were going to do. Going back to the day after the Chiefs playoff game. So they have the locker clean out, and then you have DeMeco Ryans addressing the media. And he made it clear they're absolutely tired of getting to the divisional round, that's not good enough. And that message has been reinforced. Even newcomers like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, as he said, they brought him here to put a bull on the ring, meaning the Texans logo. So going back to the end of the season, there was some dissatisfaction expressed, and I thought sort of a non-committal, commitment to going forward with offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. That was probably the biggest decision that DeMeco Ryans has had to make as a head coach, at least one that we know of. There might be something behind the scenes that we weren't aware of, but this was a really important decision. So looking at firing a close friend, someone that he'd shared an office with and had come up in the coaching ranks with the San Francisco 49ers, one of his key hires, and admitting, and this is a big thing, sign of leadership, where you can admit that something's not working and decide, well, it's not working, we've tried it, we don't anticipate it getting better. And he did that with a lot of input. He agonized over that decision, I can tell you. He really put a lot into it, into making that decision, into moving on from Bobby Slowick. So Bobby, as we've said, and I reported first, when the decision was made, that the input from players, the feedback was a thumbs down. They had lost confidence in him. There was a lack of ability to make halftime adjustments. There were some scheme issues in terms of blocking schemes. There were lack of motion. They weren't keeping the defenses off balance. And C.J. Stroud was disenchanted with the direction of the offense, especially his lack of autonomy and ability to run the show. So they go through a long search, and they wind up with Nick Caley deciding to go with an up-and-coming coach from the Sean McVay and Josh McDaniels / Bill Belichick coaching trees. And he's known as a bright young coach that's paid his dues and has a lot of upside. Just like Bobby Slowick, he'll be an inexperienced play caller, but they like his acumen and personality and some of the things, the intangibles he brings to the table, and his partnership, ability to collaborate with another key decision. They fired Chris Strausser, the offensive line coach. They saw that what he was doing wasn't working, and he wasn't on the same page with Cole Popovich. You talk about toxic, there was a division between the coaches. It wasn't the players. But they decided that, and this was another thing that DeMeco Ryans said, he basically gave you the answers to the test. he provided this blueprint saying it's time for a reset of the offensive line. And he didn't tell you we're going to trade Laramie Tunsil. No, that came out later. And, the overhaul, it includes really just 2 returning starters, Titus Howard shifting to right guard and Blake Fisher back at right tackle. And Blake's not promised a starting job, but, he is right now in the starting lineup as far as preseason. He'll line up there when they get started, and they report to training camp July 22nd, and then they'll get on the field July 23rd, and we'll be out there obviously watching everything. But yeah, going back to DeMeco, so these are his decisions. He's in charge of the coaching staff. He did it with input, but it's his decision. And he promotes Cole Popovich from assistant offensive line coach to head offensive line coach, and they also gave him the run game coordinator title. They also gave him a raise. So they negotiated a contract with him. They did a 2-year deal, and they get Popovich plugged in, and they get someone aligned with the vision and the background of Nick Caley. Instead of just throwing together a whole bunch of coaches, you have guys that have a background and a brotherhood, if you will, having worked with Bill Belichick. It's not easy to work for Belichick in terms of it's a very demanding football environment, and you've got to be on it. So guys that are trained by Belichick tend to be really good coaches. And we've seen, maybe they don't become great head coaches, but good assistant coaches. And so that's what you're talking about with these guys. And they learned a lot from Dante Scarnecchia, one of the best offensive line coaches in NFL history. So they bring that to the table. And then it's about other personnel decisions. The key decision, trading Laramie Tunsil. And now you've got an offensive line that's overhauled. So from left to right, the projection right now, Cam Robinson, left tackle. Left guard, Laken Tomlinson, someone that has a background with DeMeco, former Pro Bowl lineman with the San Francisco 49ers. Jake Andrews, someone that played for Cole Popovich at Troy University. Yes, he was with the Patriots, but that didn't overlap with Cole. So then at right guard, Howard, and right tackle, Fisher. So a lot of these moves they've got to work out. And you know what else they decided? Wide receiver, not good enough. Let's not, stand pat with the receiver group. Obviously, Nico Collins, that's a given that Nico, he's the guy, the go-to guy. But you need to complement him. It's a passing league. You need to add to that position. So how do they do that? They draft Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, both from Iowa State. And so you got to credit, Nick Caserio and his scouting and his personnel department and their ability to pull the trigger on these and trade back. They made lots of moves to try to move up. They made, what I would say, calls to try to move up. They were unable to get players like Booker, the Dallas Cowboys first-round draft pick from Alabama, or Kelvin Banks, who went to the Saints. So once they started seeing the way the board was falling, they decided to retreat. We've talked about that and the wisdom of doing that and winding up with Jaden Higgins, a tall wide. So they made these decisions to go with new wide receivers, knowing that Stephon Diggs went to the New England Patriots and is coming off of a torn ACL and has had, kind of a spicy offseason with all the Cardi B stuff and videos and things like that. But yeah, I think they'd seen enough. He was good and it wasn't great. It was good, but that they wanted to go younger. So they'd already moved for Christian Kirk, but they weren't done. They wanted to have that, as they call him, slot magician, a lot of nicknames for Kirk, who's a very polished, slick, interior wide receiver that can really run after the catch and runs textbook routes and has got good hands and a background in the AFC South, trading from the Jaguars. So Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, both Iowa State guys, both fast, and in the case of Higgins, really big. 6'4", almost 220 pounds, very similar in stature and perhaps play style to Nico Collins. So these are all decisions that DeMeco Ryans intimately involved with. Nothing happens on this football team in terms of a player they sign without him being involved in it. And so where you see him now, obviously there was a concentration on the offense, but they didn't ignore the defense. They did some big contract extensions, $90 million in new money for Derek Stingley Jr., rewarding a homegrown player that they drafted and developed and has only gotten better and better every year, including the past couple, where his durability is improved. His durability is now matching up with the talent that was obvious to anybody. It doesn't take a football genius to see how good Derek Stingley Jr. is. So you have that, but you also do Danielle Hunter, and you reward him. So you got a happy defensive room where he's going to make $54.1 million guaranteed and $55.1 million this year and next year. If they don't do that deal, then he's in a walk year, meaning he could be a free agent. So instead of having him for just 2 seasons, the Texans have him for a total of 3, and you never know, they could keep it going. So this is a local player, great pass rusher, great guy, absolutely no issues with him at all. And the tandem that they have with Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter and some good interior defensive linemen, not great, but good, it works. So, they've addressed a lot of spots. They weren't done. Safety, adding C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And, more than anything, we've seen a willingness for them to move on from players, when it's not working. So Kenyon Green, first-round draft pick, one of Nick Caserio's first selections, gone. Didn't work out. They'd seen enough. They move on. And I think that willingness to be a little bit, I don't know if ruthless is the word, but just to be bottom line-ish when something's not working shows me some growth and change in DeMeco Ryans as he becomes more and more comfortable with the personnel aspect of being head coach. So his vision and Nick Caserio, the way they work together, and you heard it from DeMeco, and he's not just saying that just to say that. He legitimately likes working with Nick, and they're a good team. So Nick is the behind-the-scenes guy. DeMeco is out front as the head coach, doing the press conferences. You don't hear a lot from Nick, and that's how he prefers it. He comes from New England. He can work for Bill Belichick. He's not a big press conference guy. When he does them when he has to, and he does a fine job with them when he's assigned to talk. But he's not looking or courting the press. That's not his thing. Neither is DeMeco, but head coach is a out front type of position. So looking at DeMeco now, record-wise, he's 22-16, including a 2-2 record in the postseason. He's 20-14 in the regular season. They've won 2 South Division titles in the AFC here, and he's been a Pro Football Writers Coach of the Year and Associated Press runner-up for Coach of the Year as the architect who has galvanized this dramatic turnaround. And you guys that are longtime fans remember how bad it was getting in the end of the Bill O'Brien era. And these short-lived one-and-done David Culley and Lovie Smith years. So finally they've got the head coach that they want, and they've got the franchise going in the right direction. Can they take the next step is what all of you all are wondering, and we're all wondering that. But they've positioned themselves, in my opinion, to be more successful, and I think some of this has to do with decision-making that have defined this offseason and will define this season, but also growth as a coach. And being a coach is more than just X's and O's and being the architect of the defense or whatever your expertise is. In his case, it's defense. It's about coaching the coaches. It's about being willing to move on from coaches if you don't think they're effective anymore and make changes. So I look at this offseason as really a pivotal one for the Texans, but I think especially for DeMeco Ryans. So it's one of those things where you see this dramatic overhaul, and I was at the league meetings with Cal McNair, and he was talking about the state of the team, and he says, pretty darn close. Pretty darn close is good. But, as they say, the cliche, close counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. Yes, they do. But close isn't good enough in football. But they are relevant. They are positioned. They're a team that I predict to make the playoffs. Whether they'll advance, I don't think anyone could tell you that. They got to get to that point. You don't start the season as a playoff team. You got to earn it. And that's true of anything in any walk of life. Just like let's say I had a bunch of stories. I've been covering the NFL for a long time. Well, none of those stories, besides the fact the knowledge and the formula and how I do things, it's not the same as the next story. And I like to think of you're only as good as your last story. Just like for coaching or a football player, you're as good as your last play, your last game, your last season. So every year I try to approach it like, well, how can I get better this season? What could I do better? What are some things I could do to improve upon? So overall, and I look at it like this, okay, well, you just started YouTube last year. During the season, you've tried to learn things, try to learn some new skills, having some fun with this, learning how to edit a little bit, and to put it together and to put a few more bells and whistles on this. But the main thing is I'm going to give you my take and my information. So yeah, in coaching, and you saw the photo on the thumbnail, and that was the first time that, other than the quick cafeteria handshake, that I was kind of really getting to know DeMeco Ryans was that day. So we talked for a little while, like a lot of the local media. We had some time with DeMeco, and he makes a strong first impression. And he's done nothing but reinforce that. And I've been at every single practice, press conference, home game, road game, playoff game, preseason game that he's coached. So I've had a chance to watch him and form my thoughts on where he stands. And this guy is one of the best coaches in the NFL. And I've covered some other coaches that I thought were outstanding. I covered Tom Coughlin. I covered Jeff Fisher. That was a Super Bowl team. I covered Brian Billick, who was a Super Bowl winner. I covered John Harbaugh, another Super Bowl winner. So I've covered some good coaches. I've seen some things here. In the initial, I saw some of the good of Bill O'Brien and some of the bad of Bill O'Brien. He's very complex. But yeah, when I see DeMeco Ryans, I see a lot of upside. And I see him being like a guy that coaches in one place for a long time, because I think that's what he wants to do. And that's his goal, and he's happy in this job. And eventually I see him and Nick Caserio signing contract extensions. That is something I would anticipate. And I'm sure the McNairs will be more than happy to reward those guys when the time is right. And they both signed very good contracts. DeMeco Ryans is one of the highest paid rookie head coaches ever in NFL history, a deal negotiated by Jimmy Sexton. I've heard it's around somewhere between $8 million and $10 million in terms of there's an upside and there's a base value. So it's a very strong deal. Nick Caserio, $6 million a year. The team spends a lot of money. They're invested in this. They're promoting guys. They're added assistant general manager titles to James Lipford and Chris Blanco. So those guys got upped, and they were lieutenants under Nick Caserio. So yeah, it's a stable organization. You didn't have a lot of change. You had a few things that you tweaked, and they were big ones: offensive line, and the offensive coordinator position, and wide receiver, augmenting that spot. But what I've seen from them, other than tight end, and even running back, they did improve by having a better backup in Nick Chubb, a guy that's capable of carrying the mail when Joe Mixon is sidelined. They've been intent on improvement. There's no satisfied. There's no rest on your laurels. And that's good. That's what you would hope for. And you say, well, Aaron, yeah, of course, that's what everybody does. I don't think so. Not everybody is as singularly focused, and I am big on action. Words are great, and I'm in the words business. So I talk for a living. I write for a living, but I write about action and things that people do, not just what they say. Things people say is great, and it does move the meter. But what I'm talking about is actual tangible activity and backing up those words with action. And that's what I've seen from the Texans and from DeMeco Ryans this offseason. So when I say they're serious, yeah, these are serious people. They are matching the words with the actions. And I think that's when you start seeing, and looking at the Texans and where things stand. They head into training camp, a team with a lot of promise, a lot of potential, and a team built in Ryan's vision. I expect the offense to be more of a hard-nosed offense with more motion. I expect them to run between the tackles more. I expect a more downhill running style. I expect less of the zone stretch plays. I also expect on defense a heavy rotation, and that means waves of defensive players. So not just Will Anderson, Daniel Hunter, but Darrell Taylor, Dylan Horton, having a lot of subbing at defensive end and defensive tackle with Foley Fadukasi, Tim Settle Jr., Mario Edwards Jr., Denico Autry, who plays tackle and end. I think they're going to use a lot of players, and they're going to try to keep guys fresh so that they can finish the season strong. Yes, there's early bye. Yes, it's a first-place schedule. All those things are true. But I think that the continuity they have with having the same head coach now for year 3, this is when the franchise can really kind of start to hit stride and take it another step further to a different level and I'm not predicting Super Bowl. I don't even know if they'll make the AFC Championship game, but I think they're a better football team today, with the exception of the left tackle position. They've improved a lot of spots, and they need to get better at tight end. That's one of the things that they didn't really get to. I don't anticipate a big trade. I think they're going to stick with Dalton Schultz. I've seen good things from Kate Stover. But overall, we're talking about vision. We're talking about the vision that DeMeco Ryans has for the Texans and what they're trying to accomplish, and they're trying to win a championship. And he said that that's the standard. That's what they're hoping to do. And like with DeMeco, I think that he's going to have a long run here, kind of like the division I used to cover, the AFC North, with the John Harbaughs and the Mike Tomlins. And I remember Nick Caserio a couple years ago. He said, you want to be like the Steelers. You don't want to have a lot of change. You want a tradition. You want to build something. This is an organization that hasn't won a lot, hasn't done a lot, and they're starting to make some good moves, and they're starting to get there. I remember when J.J. Watt visited minicamp, and J.J. was talking about how none of this happens without DeMeco's hire. And I think back to the day we met, I was talking about before. And he just makes a good, strong impression, and he's only grown and gotten better since that first day when he took over a losing franchise, where they were 3-13-1 the year before DeMeco Ryans took over. And now they're a perennial winner. They're a team that I believe is built to accomplish a lot of things. And they've got a lot of players under their rookie contracts. They've got a lot of guys that they'll be able to extend. They've got a quarterback. They have a lot of reason for hope. And hope's a great thing to have heading into training camp. Imagine the other way around. You can think back to a couple years ago, guys, when the Texans had no hope. There's no real future. They don't have a quarterback that they can go the distance with. They don't have someone with the skills and mindset of C.J. Stroud. You get Davis Mills, who's a backup. So they've come a long way, and that probably doesn't satisfy anyone out there that's been watching the Texans for a long time. But I can say this: they've made a lot of strides, and I think none of it happens without having the right leader. And the right leader is DeMeco Ryans. And, I would say that he's done a lot of things the right way, and he's been well-intentioned. And, it kind of goes back to his roots, in Bessemer, Alabama. And this was where it all kind of started for him in football. And you saw, him have Fairfax Avenue, where he grew up. Now they've renamed it in his honor, DeMeco Ryans Street. So a lot of people recognizing DeMeco Ryans and the progress that he's making and what he's doing to orchestrate a winner. That's what he wants. He wants to bring a winner to Houston, Texas, and so far he has. And, winning is like one of those things that people get addicted to. You can't win enough. And I know that feels, you want something really badly, and you put in the time and you try to work your plan and you hope that you're going to be successful. And so I can think back to, whether, anything in journalism or, back in my old football days, I wanted to win. And so when I see competitive people, I tend to gravitate toward them, and I tend to see those qualities, and you get to know people. And I can just say he's been the same every day that since I got to know him. I wasn't here when he was a player, when he's a Pro Bowl linebacker. And I think all of that is great. That background really gives him a lot of credibility with players, makes him a true player's coach. But yeah, I was covering other teams when he was playing for the Texans, for Gary Kubiak, and when he was playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. But yeah, since he's returned and I've gotten to know him, I've been very impressed. And that's the one that throws around a lot of compliments very freely, but I feel strongly about what he's doing, the direction of the franchise, and his willingness to work in tandem. And some head coaches, they dominate the general manager. That's not the case here. They work well together, they collaborate, and that's what you ideally hope for when you're talking about the head coach general manager relationship. You want to have a good relationship with ownership. You want it to be smooth with the players, but you got to be firm. You got to be able to have a firm, respected, and respectful leadership style. This isn't someone that's, constantly yelling at guys or denigrating them. That's not who he is. No, he tends to be a positive coach. He's firm, and he'll let it be known if he's displeased with something, but he's not someone that's a dictator. This is not a total democracy, but he's the boss, but he doesn't feel the need to constantly remind everyone that he's the boss. So a lot of emotional intelligence, EQ, they talk about that, and that's a quality that not everyone has in all walks of life, but that's what you hope for in a leader. And it's football. You want to see someone that has those leadership qualities to try to inspire guys, but it's not all about speeches. It's about consistency, and it's about building something that's sustainable. And with the Texans, I see them being sustainable. I think they've got a bedrock foundation of the quarterback, the head coach, the general manager, corners, pass rushers, a running back, the right kind of wide receivers. They're not missing a ton. Obviously they're going to go as far as the offensive line improvement takes them. And I think they can work around, an unenviable tight end situation, especially if Cade Stover plays as well in the games as I saw him perform in the offseason and some of the potential we saw from him as a rookie. Maybe Dalton Schultz bounces back a little bit. We're going to see. But yeah, I'm just not seeing a lot of question marks. Obviously, linebacker, could be a little bit better, a little more settled at the other linebacker spot. Next to Azeez Al-Shire. Henry To'oTo'o is a good player. Christian Harris got some health issues. And update you guys on a couple things here at the end. I know you guys like news. I still expect Christian Harris to be ready, and Joe Mixon as the head into training camp, if not the first day early in camp. And then a legal update on Jimmy Ward. So August 13th is his court date. We don't know yet if he's going to be practicing. We don't know yet if his foot is going to allow him to practice, or if they're going to have him stay away while this case goes on, and if he's going to be allowed to work and practice and do all those things. So he is not a starter. Obviously they have C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and they have Kalen Bullock, and then you have at nickel, Jalen Petrie can also play safety. And, they've got depth. But, that's the situation with Jimmy Ward. It is unresolved. It's unsettled, and we'll see what happens with that. Serious legal matter, third-degree felony charge, domestic violence. And like I always say, there's two sides to every story. We'll see what happens in court. Out there in Montgomery County, it's assigned to Judge Lisa Machalk, and we'll see how he fares in the court system. His lawyer has told me that he believes his client will be vindicated, and he's asked for people to reserve judgment. So mainly this video is about other topics, mostly about the state of the franchise and DeMeco Ryans and his growth. But I'd like to give you guys a little information here at the end. And they say a lot of good things happening. They've had throwing sessions with C.J. Stroud. He was in Toronto. He got together with a lot of the guys there. There was a DB retreat led by Derek Stingley Sr., Derek Stingley Jr.'s dad. And they went to Puerto Rico, and they had a lot of good fellowship and camaraderie and DB drills. So a lot of Texans players and other players around the NFL all attended this, and guys are working hard. There's guys working out with trainers like Justin Allen and Ja'Cory Nichols. And so, people are getting ready for the season, and so we're getting closer and closer to training camp. And, I can't wait to cover this season. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting season with lots of good stories to tell and lots of videos to make. And can't wait to bring you all the coverage. Of course, I have a live, and it's going to be, hopefully my biggest live yet, and that's going to be Thursday night, 8 p.m. Central. So please tune in. And we are close to 10,000 subscribers as I tape this video. I think we need about 38 more people. So, please watch, like, and subscribe, guys. It's free. And follow me, of course, on Twitter and X at @AaronWilson_NFL. My coverage at www.click2Houston. All this is free of charge. No subscription fees. When I say subscribe, it just means you just hit that button and you subscribe and watch and support the channel. And your support of the channel helps my family, helps me to provide more of these videos for you guys. And, there's travel. There's always all those things involved. And we have the trips to West Virginia. We're going to the Greenbrier. I'll be in Detroit. I'll be in Minnesota. I'll be in Los Angeles. Everywhere the Texans go, I'll be there bringing you guys the stories and the videos and hopefully the information that you guys are looking for, the kind of content. So yeah, please like, watch, subscribe, drop comments, whatever you guys like to do. I enjoy the interaction and I look forward to our chat. And so yeah, please check it out. And I've shared the link and I'll reshare it again tomorrow. Guys, thanks. Until next time.